Welcome to In Conversation with Brad Wenders. I'm very pleased with this guest. Those of you that watch regularly will know that I spoke about my friend Jamie, who I'd been asking to come on the podcast. And Will Richards, thank you very much, put out a little shout out to Jamie to come on the podcast. So here we are. We have Jamie Hammond, who's got some really interesting stories to tell. And the first thing I noticed about Jamie is that he does have his entire beard. Now,
I do.
Jamie, before we jump back in time, could you tell us why you having a full beard is important?
Well, this whole social media campaign came about last year in December. I was raising money for the hospital that looked after my brother who had leukemia. And they fixed him, which was good because I wasn't going to do any kind of fundraising until he was fully healed. The fundraiser was people could donate money. And for every £5 that you donated, you had a vote towards what type of beard I would have over Christmas. And for those that don't know, over Christmas, you've got my birthday, you've got New Year's Day. I was working during that period. So there was a lot of opportunities for people to mess with me. And I expected it to be something silly like, oh, you've got to have a regular moustache, or like you were going for the general, I believe, which is across and down and curved up. Would have been great. But in the end, one of my best friends managed to orchestrate a campaign to get me to have exactly half a beard. So for a week over Christmas, Christmas Day, Boxing Day, birthday, going to work, New Year's Eve, half a beard. Just half.
I still think you should have done half of your entire body, like just completely, so that everyone could appreciate it.
No barber wants to do that. No one wants to get under this shirt.
So, all right, and that's the beard, and that's the recent thing, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to get you on the show to talk about that.
Yeah.
Because when you were campaigning for this, you were making some really good content, really engaging, fun content.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed making videos, and I was thinking about this because I knew I was going to be coming here, and I was thinking about, the creativeness of my life. And I remembered that my grandparents had a video camera, and I ended up playing with that when I was like 12. So I've always enjoyed making videos. I just never pursued it and did anything with it, Like I was walking around as a preteen interviewing people at like family gatherings and stuff. And I've always had little bits here and there, like the ice bucket challenge. Everyone was just dumping buckets of ice on themselves, and I wanted to do something a little bit more. So my version of that was dumped from a second-story window out, and with actual ice crashing on my head. I got a little gash at the end. It was great. But it's something I really enjoy doing, and I've never pursued it as like a career. It's just something that needs to be more. It's a nice outlet. I mean, during the pandemic, that's a great example of when you had the time to do those projects, because I, like most people, was shut down. I was at home, and I thought I would take a negative of the lockdown, being stuck inside, and turn it into a positive. I mean, it was an enforced staycation, and I wanted to do some like daily clips of what we were doing during that time. And looking back on it, like I'm a sad person that watches my own YouTube videos, but I go back on it because it's a nice memory of that time, and hanging out with my wife and the cats, and going on our one walk that we were allowed a day.
Yeah. Do you think that you, given the time, would be interested in doing some sort of maybe YouTube creation or some short form creation?
I think I would, and I think it's not just me. I think most people, given the time and space, would choose to be creative. I think most people don't. Like, they have free time. They might spend the first day or two sitting on the sofa thinking this is great. But then eventually they're going to want to do something with their time, whether it's play a sport or create a video. Or people, I think, at their core are creative and not destructive.
That's a really interesting point. And it's something that I noticed as well. I think we all noticed during lockdown, during pandemic times. There was that fear, and we were all had that like blitz spirit in it together, and people nice to each other at the supermarket. But the number of people that were doing creative artistic pursuits, and it seems like human beings, when not forced to go to work for 40 plus hours a week, naturally become creative. I mean, I was doing daily videos of fitness stuff because that was fun. Yeah,
and you were doing updates to your kinetic people, like about what was going on. And I remember there was a video of you sitting on the equipment and talking like, hey, we've been shut down, and here's the rules, here's what we're going to do. And I think, Hazel got into bead work, like she was making things out of beads and stuff like that. And everyone was making bread.
Yes, they were.
Couldn't get yeast for love nor money, could you?
And what that brings us on to, when we've got like talking about pandemic and everyone being creators, some people have run with that, and some of the biggest YouTube creators came out of like doing videos in that time when they had time. A guy I had on last week, Dave, started doing videos when he was off work.
Oh,
and
fantastic.
He's now got 12,500 subscribers, and it's not his full-time gig, but it's a big thing for him.
No, who's the guy? Gary Viner? What's the guy's name?
Gary V.
Gary V. Yeah, what's his full name? Vaynerchuk or something?
Yeah, Vaynerchuk.
Yeah.
Please let us know in the comments.
Yeah, please. Names are not my strong suit. But I saw a video from him, and this must have been like 5 or 6 years ago, and he was saying that with the ever-expanding digital landscape that's out there, there's going to be people that their full-time job is just making videos for their 15,000 subscribers, and it's going to be whatever they're interested in, and that will generate just about enough income to be like a minimum wage or maybe slightly above minimum wage job. And that is potentially a new, like, untapped market of people, like actual careers in the future.
Yeah.
Because, the population of the UK is 7 million, 8 million?
Thereabouts. Yeah.
I don't know. It's a lot, isn't it? You have to get a very small amount of those people to listen and watch you for it to become a equivalent to a minimum wage job. It's not, potentially not that hard.
Which brings in something I've spoken to other creators about, is that, like, as technology moves on and as our access to entertainment moves on, when you and I were younger, I'm a little bit older than you, but when you and I were younger, we had
only just, not that much.
We had like 4 channels, then 5 channels, and then some people had Sky, but their access to media wasn't massive.
It was very, very negative, like very linear, very, very
absolutely.
tight.
And you would have those conversations, whether it be at the coffee machine at work or at school, like, did you see that thing last night?
Of course.
Because everyone's having that shared experience. Whereas now we don't have that. It's like, did you binge that thing? Oh, we haven't got there yet. We're episode. So while we're getting semi-shared experiences, you turn on Netflix or Disney Plus or anything, the volume of...
Oh, you could sit there for days and not repeat things, and that's just on one of those apps. Like, Fallout has just recently come out and everyone's raving about that. I haven't even started it yet because we've just started Atlanta and we're deep into that now. And you're never going to catch up.
No.
You're always going to miss something.
Not having those shared experiences means that everything can become a bit niche because...
Of course.
We're not... the example Dave used was technology. It used to be if you were into tech, you'd watch Tomorrow's World on Friday night and you talk to your friends about whatever you'd seen on Tomorrow's World. Well, now you can be really, really interested in niche tech and you'll watch YouTube channels and you'll read articles and you might talk to far less people about that really niche tech. You and I could talk about Dungeons and Dragons because we have an interest, but there's probably not as many people in our social circles that we'd have that conversation with. Yeah,
and then again, even within that, you've got people that go, "Oh, no, I'm a 5th ed guy," or "I'm first edition only," or Pathfinder. The Pathfinder versus D&D debate is huge.
Yeah, so you've gone from like we all play games to we play this version of this game, and if you don't, and I noticed this in my own personal experience with my motorcycle club. Like I joined a bike club that was specific to the type of engine that's in the bike that I've got.
Oh, really? It wasn't just an excuse to wear leather?
It was always just an excuse to wear leather. My custom-made leathers, which are upstairs. So I joined a club that was for people who had Triumph motorcycles that had a 3-cylinder engine.
My goodness.
Specifically the Speed and the Street Triples, but there's some others in there as well, which is a really niche thing. So we've gone from being like, I am a motorcyclist, to I am a guy that rides a British-made bike, to I'm a guy that rides a British-made bike with 3 cylinders that doesn't have a fairing or whatever. Like, and that's the kind of niche groups you get on like Facebook and Instagram and things.
Just take it further. Just say, right, all of those things, but mine's red. I only want guys that will ride those bikes in red.
Yeah, so it becomes very niche, and I think that compartmentalization of society, it just sows further division, I guess.
It does. I mean, you were saying before about, people used to watch the same things on Saturday nights or anything like that. I haven't watched terrestrial TV in years at this point. I don't really watch anything live except for maybe like the odd football game or the World Cup or something. And so there isn't really that general sense of, like, say, the water cooler talk where you're saying like, hey, what did you think of this? And you're like, well, it's on the list of things I have to get to, but I'm probably never going to get there,
Yeah, suddenly your entertainment becomes another thing you do need to administer in your life.
Exactly, it becomes another chore.
Yeah. Like social media and keeping up to date with messages and things can be overwhelming.
Oh, don't. I love it when my phone goes on sleep mode at 9:30. I'm like, right, good night.
Oh, 9:30. Mine does 10 o'clock now, okay, so I got another half an hour of the knowledge of the world being thrust into my eyes.
Yeah.
So, okay, like that's an aside, and really interesting to kind of have these conversations with people who are kind of a similar age to me, and mostly similar
elder
experiences.
millennials, I think, is it elder millennial? Is that us?
Yeah, we are. I mean, geriatric millennial is what some people would say. I was born in 1983, and you.
Well, I remember getting AOL, so like that was my first internet.
Yeah, I remember dial-up and not having computers at school when we were little or very young.
Yeah.
Let's jump back, because something I am interested in, and I've got a few guests that are on this, are people that have traveled to other countries for work and other things. So I spoke to Chris a few weeks ago, who went out and he now lives in Boise, Idaho, and he's got kids, and he's got this fantastic life over there, from Malden originally, or Braintree, sorry. So could you just talk a little bit about how you ended up living in the States? What led to that?
Yeah, well, I've always been interested in like American culture, as most people in England are, because that is America's biggest export is culture and entertainment, isn't it?
And cheese.
And cheese, yeah.
Cheese is
terrible. They've got these caves in Wisconsin that have like 50% of the world's cheddar or something.
Wow.
Genuinely, like these massive caves, and it's like a store of cheddar cheese. But yeah, I've always had an interest in American culture, and it came about, again, I know you're bringing on people that you know, so a lot of the stories are going to tie into you, but part of the reason I went out to the US is because of you. I was skateboarding around the age of 17, 18, I think it must have been. And you came down to the park one day, on your own, by the way, which is brave. Just as a regular guy coming down to the skate park and just hanging out with people that you don't know. We got chatting because I'm a fairly sociable person. I like to talk to people and have a conversation. And you mentioned that you'd just come back from, I think you were in New York, was your camp, wasn't it? And you said how much fun you had. And at the time, I was just working full-time at TK Maxx, bored out of my mind, working for beer money. So I just wanted to find something different to do. And I looked into it, ended up going to one of those fairs in London and talking to people. And I ended up at a summer camp in Michigan, which is in the northeast of the country. It's the one shaped like a hand. And the guy that was running it, Matt Langdon, who you should probably try and have on this podcast if I can get him for you.
Oh, please. Yes.
He sold it to me as it's the stereotypical summer camp that you see in the films, without all the sex and the killing.
Yeah.
There was a bit of sex.
just a little bit.
Yeah, just enough to keep things going. But yeah, it was a great experience. I went out there for one summer, and I wrote down in my notes, it's one of the only jobs I've ever loved. Like I was really good at it, It helps you be creative. It helps you with emotional stuff, because you're talking to young kids, you're mentoring them essentially, which looking back as an 18-year-old, you don't know anything, do you? But you're going to be mentoring 10-year-olds. Yeah. It's wild that they left us alone with kids for weeks on end. But you get to be creative, you get to have that emotional connection with the kids, and you get to see that you're making a difference as well. I was there for 3 summers in a row. And after the first summer, a kid came back, and his mum told me quietly on the side, he's like, I asked for your cabin, he wants to be with you again. And she said, he's modeled his whole aesthetic after you. He was wearing the skater shoes, he had the baggy jeans, awesome. the 2-layered t-shirts and stuff. Awesome. And she was like, you made such an impact on that kid, and that kind of thing sticks with you, Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I lived out there for a while. I was dating a girl, and I started going to university, and financially things went wrong. My dad is an estate agent, and he was helping me out with some of the fees out there, and the 2008 crash was obviously pretty devastating for him, and so I had to come home. But for those 4 or 5 years, it was great.
So did you leave university in America without finishing your degree?
Yeah, I did 2 years at community college, mm-hmm. and my plan was to transfer to the University of Michigan. But again, we never really got to that point because I hadn't finished the bachelor's. I think 2 years over there is a bachelor's degree, mm-hmm. I believe. And
am I right in thinking that the cost of education out there is somewhat different?
Yeah, it's a lot more expensive. It's weird because each state is effectively a country. America, you think of it as a unit, but it's not. It's so many different countries all smashed together into one cohesive-ish unit. When you're at university, so community college is like the cheapest version, and then you have proper universities, and then if you are from outside of the state, you pay a premium to attend a different state's university.
Right.
So they call it out-of-state fees or something.
And you were definitely out of state.
I was out of country, yeah. I was paying whatever the most they could get from me was. That's what they got. I had to find my own health insurance and stuff because obviously they don't have that over there. And one of the lines was it must include repatriation. And I had to look that up, and it's if I die, they ship me home.
Yep.
I was like, okay, good. But at one point, my fingers were worth $5,000 each. Yeah. I genuinely had conversations. I'm like, I could do with a 10 grand,
Yeah. Loss of thumbs is always quite a high one.
That was about 20 grand, I think, yeah.
Did you understand the healthcare system before you went out there?
I knew that it didn't exist. No, that's not fair. I knew that it wasn't like the NHS over here, but you talk about the costs of some things out there. Like my girlfriend at the time was diabetic.
Right.
And she had a seizure one night, and her roommate called an ambulance for her. And she was mad. She was upset that she called an ambulance because that was a lot of money that her dad ended up having to pay.
Yeah. Funnily enough, a guest I had on recently.
I did actually listen to that
Chris,
episode. Yeah, he was talking about that.
Didn't call an ambulance because they would have bankrupt the guy.
Genuinely, like some people call Ubers instead. Like it's wild.
Yeah, it is a different world. It really is a different world. And it's nice to talk to other people that have had the experience of not just visiting there on holiday, which is a whole different thing, but actually having lived and worked out there.
Yeah, it's very different. And I didn't really pay much in the way of taxes because I was an out of state, out of country person. But I still had to go and file my taxes, which again is a really weird thing to do because they know how much you owe and they want you to send them that money, but they won't tell you it.
No.
They have to get these third parties involved.
Yeah. So the IRS knows how much you owe them.
Yeah.
You've then got to work it out and they'll fine you if you get it wrong.
And they'll give you it back if you get too much. It's like, could you not just tell me?
Just send me a bill.
But then you get into American politics with like lobbyists and stuff, and that's part of the reason that exists is the people. I think the biggest company is like H&R Block. They do the taxes for most of America, and there are free resources you can use online to do your taxes. But H&R Block are like lobbying their governmental people to restrict access to that or to make it harder or more obtuse. Like not necessarily a straightforward process.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, America, money talks probably more so than a lot of other Western countries.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
It's like a big corporation, and from the outside looking in, it really is all about a very small bunch of people making a whole lot of money.
Yeah. Speaking of New York and stuff, where you were there just before 9/11, weren't you?
There for the time of 9/11, and that was one of the crowning moments of my life. I was 18, 2001, gone out, and I've worked summer in a summer camp, and I've got a photo at the top of the World Trade Center on the 7th of September 2001. 7th.
It's wild.
And it was days before social media, so
sure.
Parents didn't know exactly where I was, and I'd got on a flight and gone down to Florida on what must have been maybe the 9th of September 2001. Right. So yeah, I woke up West Palm Beach to my mum phoning me on the morning of 9/11. I'm like, "Where are you? Are you okay?" I'm like, "What?" And then the phone dies because
of course.
did. Yeah, and we had to get back to New York. I flew out of JFK Airport on the 16th of September 2001. It was probably the safest flight you're ever going to get on.
Exactly.
There was a pilot at the door and a sign saying pilot's discretion on passengers.
Yeah,
so after you've done all the security, there's just a pilot there, and if he doesn't like the look of you, you're not getting on the plane. That was an interesting experience. Like we had to go from Florida, and we got on the bus, and said we were going to go north. And they said, well, state lines are closed. You won't get out of Florida. So we got to the Florida border, and they were just opening up. We got told, you're absolutely not going to get any further than Washington, D.C. We're going to go up the East Coast. And when we get to Washington, we'll have to stop. And by the time we got to Washington, it was starting to, traffic was moving, and they were opening because the Pentagon got hit as well. And then, there's no way on earth that this bus is going to go onto Manhattan by the time we got there. Because, straight line, it's a 30-hour drive. It's a massive drive up the East Coast. And by the time we got there, which would have been I want to say September the 13th, maybe morning of.
So a couple of days afterwards, yeah.
Yeah, and we went across the bridge onto Manhattan Island, and I just remember looking at the bus and seeing this smoke cloud where these towers were drifting.
It burned for days, didn't it?
Yeah. But the plumes of smoke were where the height of the towers, and the wind was drifting north, burnt into my brain. And I just went and stayed in a hotel room and read Spider-Man comics for a few days. Local MP Simon Burns from Chelmsford was really good at getting people back. So
really?
Virgin Airways, because you think of the backlog of that many days of no flights, Virgin Airways sent a load of flights over, and they just piled them up, and the MPs who were shouting the loudest got their people on. Really? And Simon Burns from Chelmsford, my mum was on the phone to him every day. She's like, her 18-year-old son is in New York at the moment.
See, that's so interesting. I would never think to consider talking to my local representatives. I would just be waiting for things to be okay and then get gone. But no, that's a great idea. Go to your local people.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, just on local MPs, our local MP is Priti Patel here. And we were raising some money for the carnival recently. And she sent a whole bunch of letters to big businesses that have got branches locally, including the big developer who's building a housing estate over there. I got an email from this housing developer because she told him to contact me, and they did. I was like, mate, if I emailed them and said, can I have
straight into spam, just gone. Yeah.
Yeah. But because it comes from the Office of Priti Patel,
of course, yeah.
Brad Wenders on it, like they've got in touch, and so it does get things done, and MPs can do productive things, but they can also vote against basic human rights, which is something we don't really want.
It's got to be hard. We were talking earlier briefly, and no matter what they do, 50% of the country is not going to approve of what they're doing.
Yeah,
like, it's a thankless job.
So on that, when you were living in Michigan, what were the politics of Michigan? Was it blue, red state? Like,
I believe, because I was living in Ann Arbor, which is a lovely city. I love it there. It's great. It is heavily liberal because it's a college town,
of course,
and college kids tend to lean more to the left. But I believe Michigan as a whole was right-leaning, so red.
Home of General Motors, you've got Detroit, you've got that kind of that.
And I think again, I might be showing my ignorance here, but I'm pretty sure they were right-leaning in like the rural areas of Michigan, which made up enough for it to go red. But I believe currently the governor is Gretchen Whitmer. Mm-hmm. And I think she is heavily left-leaning, I believe. She was like pro-lockdowns and all the stuff the Americans consider to be terrible, like being told what to do.
Yeah.
She's into all that. And I believe they are a liberal state at the moment.
Okay. And even that kind of thing is interesting. I spoke again about like the example of if Donald Trump said the sky is blue, those that don't subscribe to his politics would disagree because you can't agree with anything he said.
Well, it's not actually blue. It's just the way the light refracts through the air.
Because you can't be seen to be agreeing with anything that side. Yeah. And I had an interesting chat with an American friend about lockdowns. And we were kind of in lockdown at the time, and we were on a Zoom call, and we were just chatting because that's all we had to do.
Sure.
And I said something like it's really not good for the mental health of young people to be cooped up. Yeah. And she's like, actually, studies have shown that it's really good for the mental health of young people. I'm like, what? And it really baffled me because she works in education. She works with young people. She's quite up on youth psychology. And I was like, I didn't press it. And
again, you have to be careful. You have to tiptoe around those subjects because you can quite easily alienate people.
And the reason was because they were like very Democrat family. The Republicans were pushing for no lockdowns or less lockdowns, and the Democrats were pushing for lockdowns. And the reason for the lockdowns wasn't to improve the mental health of young people. No. It was to stop, contamination and slow the pandemic. But because it was a politicized subject, she had to and was compelled to say, well, lockdowns are good for the mental health. They're a good thing. But they're not. Yeah, it was necessary.
It's so tribalist now, isn't it? Like I do speak regularly with my American friends, and I think I would consider myself to be sort of somewhere in the middle, centrist, because, not everything that the liberals do is good, and the same for the Republicans. They're not, nobody's right. It's just you have different opinions.
Yeah, we've got more nuanced politics over here. I think
so.
I think so. It's acceptable for you to subscribe to certain things. Like I know a lot of people who would consider themselves to be like economically socialists, so would believe in the welfare state and the NHS, but might also disagree with immigration and not be on board with gay rights, trans rights, and those kind of things. Yeah. So socially right-leaning, but economically left-leaning. Yeah. I know a lot of people that fall into that camp, or the other side.
It can be more nuanced.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be balls deep, no matter what.
And it's interesting you mentioned Gary Vee, because the quote, the Gary Vee quote that I was given last week by Dave was, in a world where you've got red and blue, the answer is probably purple.
There you go, yeah. That's a good way of looking at it, yeah.
So we jumped across like 3 years of you being in America. Like, what were you studying in college out there?
I was going to be a teacher. I was studying education at the time. It seemed like a natural progression from the summer camp experience, like looking after kids and stuff. And I also found that I'm not dumb as much. Again, I've never been like, I'm a stupid person, but I did not get on with school. I did the tests, but anything outside of school hours was a bit like, why are you making me do this? I'm not in your building. I don't want to do homework. I don't want to do coursework. I don't want to do all those things. So I wasn't the best student, but I got, I think, 6 GCSEs, 8, something like that. Enough to be middle of the road.
Yeah.
But I found when I was out there that I was an A-star, maths kid.
Does that say more about the American education system than ours?
Well, they grade very easily, maybe. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think it was more that I was 20, what would I be there, 23? And so I was actually actively engaged in wanting to learn as opposed to being forced to.
Yeah.
I think the human brain develops properly at the age of 25 or mental maturity at 25 or something like that.
I'm still waiting.
You'll get there, man. Don't worry. Yeah, once you lose your hair, that's when you get it. But yeah, it was more about like I was actually actively interested in trying to better myself and to, again, give something back maybe, maybe to help people a bit more. And education is a noble calling, I think. It's hard to be a teacher. It's most people that I know that were teachers through the summer camps or through university courses I've been on, most of them are not teachers anymore because the pay, the hours, and especially in America, the social stigma. They hear that they're not working full time. They get summers off, and it's like, it's not really off, is it? Because they have to do so much work to prepare for the next year. And I think it was George Bush brought in the No Student Left Behind Act, where teachers have to be constantly learning. So you can't just be a teacher. You have to then re-enroll every couple of years and do a course or something like that to keep your knowledge levels up.
No, that's a good thing. I don't know if we have something similar over here. I don't know a huge amount about the education system over here.
I could be talking out my arse out all of this. These are all things that I've just heard in the past.
But you're immersed in education and working with young people.
Yeah, and again, it's something that maybe I should get back to. But at the same time, you still have to. There's not a huge amount of money in it. I mean, you're running this academy here. You were talking on a couple of podcasts ago about how much it costs to run this place and how much that has skyrocketed. And if those trends continue, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, and all we can do, because this is a private company, is to pass that cost on to the customer. And there's only so much you can stretch the customer.
Because the increase in like dues, or what do you call it? Subscriptions, dues?
Yeah, memberships and things.
Yeah. The increase in that, if you gain 10%, you might lose 8% of your customers.
Yeah.
It's...
Yeah. And also I do care about my customers, and I know some people are struggling, and I will always think, like, when we want to put the price up, I'll think about that one person, not the other 200 or whatever.
Sure.
So what we did was we've set up a not-for-profit organization, which runs, at the moment it kind of runs in parallel to the limited company, and takes on funded projects and runs activities for kids, and it borrows like the staff from here. So the guys that work here, the coaches, will do some work for the not-for-profit
that's good.
on like an hourly basis and things. But that's kind of taken some like legs of its own. And interestingly, actually, funnily, talking about you being on here, you keep coming into the forefront of my mind, and I wish that I could afford you at the moment, but maybe in a couple of years, because what we need is people who are good at working with kids who aren't necessarily sporty people. So we're doing more like food education and just general mentorship for young people that are in the periphery of crime, people that are from very low income families, just simple things like getting them to sit around a table and have dinner together, like with us, and doing how you can prepare like low cost meals and how to do food prep and things like that.
Trust me, I'm good at that.
Yeah, there we go.
I'm skinned. Low cost meals are my go-to.
Yeah. So and that's kind of taken on its own life. That's outside of like doing jumping around and activities like that. So that's.
But again, that goes back into the giving back, the charity side of things. Like it's not only good for society, it's good for you as well as a person to give back to people.
Yeah.
If you can help somebody out, it actually does feel better than not.
Yeah, and I guess that's just the way I was raised, is to want to help people. Like that's a normal thing. It's not something that I'm like intentionally thinking, I must go out and help as many. It's just if you see someone and you're in the position to help them.
Why would you not?
Yeah, exactly.
It costs you nothing.
Yeah,
well, it might cost you something, but
it definitely does. And that's like a Grahamism, like Graham being a stepdad, and like that comes from him. He would always just want to help people out, like
because it's the right thing to do, not because it's easy.
Yeah, exactly, and often isn't easy. But the things that we get ingrained into us as children, those values are very hard to break.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Which means that when you have children, or you're in a position of responsibility for children, working in camps, being a teacher, the values that you instill in those kids are the ones that are going to stick with them, are going to be very hard to break.
Yeah.
Which is, there's pros and cons of that. If you're giving them a good moral compass, great. And arguably people that are raised in religious households might go one of two ways, and might be like, right, I'm hating on religion forever.
Course, yeah.
Or might be, the ones that are...
well, again, like your previous guest who left Mormonism, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, you don't know what it's going to do.
No, absolutely.
But I think, again, we spoke briefly earlier about the having the third space as well. Like, a lot of people just go from work or school to home, and they don't have that third space where they have a chance to explore who they are and like to branch out and try new things and give yourself a mental break from the home life and the work life, you know.
Yeah. And having
if you can give that to some disadvantaged kids, then great. You know, that gives them a place where they're not at school having to learn, or at home, which may not be the best environment. If you can give them a third space where they can just be a kid or learn some skills or whatever, that'd be great for them.
Yes, third space, really important, because you do have home, and not everyone's home is a positive place for them.
Exactly.
It's unfortunate. And work and school isn't always a positive place. So having somewhere that people feel safe and that feeling of belonging is super important. And a running theme, I've spoken to guests that have done interesting things and have gone and like had adventures, and it's always been about that feeling of belonging, and belonging as in part of a tribe, whether that be a lot of drama clubs actually. But would it be safe to say that you had a great time identifying with your friends, your friendship group growing up? You guys are still really tight.
Yeah, we are.
And what
again,
kind of
I was lucky. I don't even know how it happened. It just sort of, we all fell in together at the right place at the right time. You know, it's so easy to get the wrong people around you and to be easily influenced in the wrong direction. You know, well, I'm not saying we were angels. we did some pretty out there things, you know, but we never fell into drugs. We never fell into like crime or anything like that. And being Essex boys, as you know, like that's quite easy. It's around everywhere, you know, and especially in like the alternative skateboarding punk scene that we were kind of loosely, tangentially attached to. You know, you could have had anything you wanted. You know, you could have had all sorts, but I still to this day have never smoked a cigarette. I've never done any kind of drugs. You know, obviously I drink a little bit too much, but that's about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the guys are all great, and we've all been like best man at each other's weddings and stuff, and you know, we are 37 now, so we've been hanging out for the last 25 years.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous now that you say it out loud, isn't it? 25 years.
25 years. In fact, it was, I mean, it must be 20 years ago we met.
Yeah.
And you guys were thick as thieves then.
Yeah. And it is a blessing. You know, my third space for a long time was the skate park. You know, we would go after school, we would go on the weekends, and much like yourself with the free running, it was like it was an outlet, you know, it was creative, but also physical, you know. It was, I think I said one time that skateboarding it's quite close to meditation, because your mind has to be completely empty, but you have to be focused on what you're doing. If you're thinking about what's for dinner, you know, you're not going to land properly, you're going to hurt yourself.
Yeah.
And if you're not very focused on what's in front of you, you're going to hit a small stone, you're going to wipe out, and you're going to, you know, that's it. You're limping for a week.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And those activities, like, well, when I was learning to ride ramps, you're just thinking about what you're doing in the moment, and everything else is unimportant. It's a real good escape. Like skateboarding was a great escape for me when I had things on my mind.
Just can't do it anymore.
No?
Oh no. You know, physically I can ride the board, but if I hurt myself now, it's financial ruin.
Yeah, there is that. And also the ramps we used to skate on, the Chelmsford skate park, because they were old and metal, they had a bit of give.
They bounced, yeah.
Have you skated the concrete they've replaced it with?
Yeah, it's all right.
Ouch.
But if you fall over, you're gonna know about it.
There is no give in concrete.
No.
That hurts.
Yeah. It was. We missed the old ramps. They were good.
Yeah. Someone should have. I think someone did steal one of the bits. The jump
the
box.
one at the again, Essex. You know, could have been anybody.
Yeah. This is like hot off the press. So the Essex Urban Games used to be a thing. Like, it was in conjunction with YFest, which is the YMCA festival in Chelmsford. We'd probably been there a few times and not even realised it was going on. Like when there were skate comps at the skate park, and like bands and DJs.
Oh yeah, I've seen those things.
Yeah. So that kind of stopped being a thing. And I was talking to Tash last night, and we're going to go to Essex County Council and the youth service and see if there's any way we can bring that back to life, to have
that'd be cool.
An event at every skate park around Essex for young people to just kind of come down, have some music, have some food, and just have a bit of a celebration of urban culture in Essex. So that's, we did discuss this last night, so it's fresh.
There you go. And again, you're the kind of guy that might have the means or the doors open to you to get that kind of thing going, you know. But again, to take away the... what's the right word for it? The intimidation of going to the skate park, you know, because if you don't know what you're doing, seeing a bunch of 15-year-olds flying around on skateboards is quite intimidating.
Yeah. And on that, there's something, like, I've done a lot of things over the years. Like I've been involved.
You've done a lot of things.
I've done a lot of things.
You've been here, there, and everywhere, man.
And I think the reason I don't tell a lot of my own stories, and I quite like talking to other people because stories just kind of creep in,
Sure.
is the thing in the back of my mind, if I were at a pub and someone were telling the stories that are in my head, I'd think they were lying. Therefore, I feel like no one's going to believe some of the things. But like, if I tell the story about that and they're like, okay, fair enough. And then I tell that story and that story, and they're like, how on earth have you done? But
A plus B does not equal C. How did you get here?
Yeah. So, but in terms of like people accepting you, you're right. I did. I was 20 years old, maybe, and went to the skate park with a skateboard and was like, I want to learn to skateboard, and ended up knee deep in skate culture, was going on like adventures, and we were like skateboarders. Like,
well, and again, you've spoken with other people that Jackass was quite a big show at the time.
Yeah.
You know, and so that heavily influenced what we wanted to do. And so we would drive around and do Jackassy silly things, you know?
But how quickly and how well I, as a stranger, was embraced by what was already a solid group of friends. Like I was hanging out with you guys for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And we went and did loads of cool stuff. And that was amazing. And that I was just accepted because we had that shared interest. And then similarly with motorcycling, I joined a bike club and these guys like helped me through things like my divorce and my friend's suicide, and like without even realizing they helped me with that, because I was just like, I'm going to go out on my bike because I need to clear my head. And those guys would be the people that I was there with. And they
you went to your third space.
Yeah, my third space was on the bike or on the skateboard or here. And I mean, this is work and my third space. This is this. So just
Well, yeah, you've got a lovely gym out there.
Yeah, so for reference, this is the studio of my academy that we're in now. So it's a really cool space. We've got a gym there. We've got our parkour stuff out that way. And this is like both my second and my third space. It's work, but also play. So what happened when you came back from America? Because you were in a relationship with a girl and there'd been a financial crash and your dad couldn't assist anymore. So how did that...
Yeah, I think in a word, depression.
Right.
I don't want to get too dark, but I definitely went into a dark place because I was, living and working in America. And then all of a sudden that couldn't happen anymore. I was dating this girl. We'd been together for 4 years at that point.
Wow.
And came back, and instead of like centering myself and like trying to figure out what to do next, I was just like, right, let's just carry on with the education thing. I ended up going down to University of Plymouth, and I got enrolled there, which was good. But the courses I was doing in America didn't necessarily translate to English courses. And so I wasn't on the education path anymore. I was on the childhood education or something like that. It was learning about kids rather than learning how to teach kids. And so I would have to complete that and then do a teacher training year or something. And because I'd come in just after the school year had started, I wasn't a first year student. They put me in with the second year, so everyone already knew each other, and I was the guy coming in. And I couldn't get a job because there was no jobs available for students because all the earlier kids had got there. I came in like October or something, and so I missed that first month. And it was it was about 3 or 4 months of just not happy, not enjoying what I was doing. I should have taken some time at home to like recenter and decide what to do, like reassess for my next move. And the girlfriend at the time, she was just graduating. So she was leaving university. And she was, like I said to her, why don't you come over to England and just live with me while I do my university thing, and then we're both done and we can go find jobs in whichever country, And for her own reasons, I don't want to throw shade, but she didn't want to do that. She wanted to start her career, and she was like, I've got these contacts, I need to do something with it. And I, again, probably in a depressive state, I took that as a bit like a sign of non-committalness, like not she wasn't as in as I was, like I was quite happily moving over there and extending my time over there as much as I could.
Yeah.
And then when it came time for me to need to be supported, and she had the free time, kind of, she didn't come over. And yeah, I found that hard. I think I probably contributed to the down spiral. But it all worked out in the end because I've got a lovely wife and I've been married for, what? I'm going to get this wrong on camera now. What is it, 8 years this year?
Has it been that long?
Yes, 8 years. Yeah.
It was a good
Yeah,
wedding.
it was a dark time in Plymouth, but it definitely pointed me in a different direction, which is what am I trying to say with that? It pointed me in a different direction. It moved me away from education and into more of a traditional like life. I had to get a job. I had to, because obviously once I didn't enjoy being in Plymouth, I had to move home. Eventually started working at the Fleece, and I got a photography job off the back of that. Again, we can talk about that as well. I was doing the Duke of Edinburgh Awards, photographing those. That was fun. And it was a real hard left turn, but it worked out for the best, I think.
Yeah.
At least for now. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, you're in a great space, and you and Hazel are just fantastic together. I'm the first to admit, when you and Hazel were together in the early days, she and I didn't see eye to eye, and that's probably an understatement. But hand on heart, I think you guys are superb together, and I would actually love to spend more time with you and Hazel. And I've probably got some making up to do for being a bit mean to her in the early days.
Well,
but
again, I think she would say the same about you. She's like, I was too mean to the guy. Like, I didn't know why I didn't like him or whatever.
Some people just
for no reason.
But you guys are just so good, and she's fantastic, and I couldn't imagine you with anyone else.
Well, I think we've been dating for 12 years, but we've been married for 8 now. It's wild.
Yeah.
It's good.
So, photography.
Yeah.
What took you down that path?
So, it's another one of those things that I really probably should have worked harder at being good at, if that makes sense. Like, I am a good photographer. I'm happy. I will happily say that I'm a good photographer. But, well, as you know, running a business is not as easy as just being like, oh, send the clients in, let's figure this out.
Yeah, it is not.
You have to put a lot of legwork in to get your foot in the door. And, if you can't do a job, there's 50 guys behind you that can also take a photo, I was working for a company doing graduations, when you stand there with the scroll and the hat. Ironic, actually, that I never graduated, and I was photographing the graduates. I probably should have made that connection ages ago. But yeah, I was doing the photos for that, and it was, I don't want to say it was a bad work environment, because it wasn't. I enjoyed it, and I was good at it. But there was no incentive to be a top-performing photographer. Mm-hmm. You did a couple of sessions with us, didn't you, on some of those grads?
Yeah. And I quite enjoyed it to an extent, but it wasn't something I would want to do every day.
It was very commercial.
Oh, it's a machine.
Yeah,
it's a conveyor belt.
Yeah, get in, smile, get out.
Yeah.
And I think I was averaging about 100 families a day on these jobs. And I did it for 4 years and 100 days a year. So like 40,000 families have my picture on the wall somewhere across the country.
Yeah.
And you were paid the same, because it was like a day rate. You were paid the same whether it was 100 photos or 50.
Yeah.
So there was no incentive to be the top guy, aside from your own ego.
Yeah.
And I do like to win.
And the bonus structure actually with that company was quite the leveler, because you got a bonus based on everyone's work for the day.
Exactly.
But you're right that arguably incentivizes teamwork. But if someone's slacking, you're kind of like, I don't want to work any harder to earn that person any money. Like, I don't know whether it's a good or a bad
socialism?
thing.
Is that not? Yeah.
Like,
I don't know. Is that communism? Which one's that?
Everyone's putting into the pot. So it should be quite a socialist idea that everyone's working hard for the greater good.
Sure.
But if someone's not pulling their weight, you're like, well, I don't want to work harder so that you get more money.
And that was it. And if you are consistently one of the top performers, I'd say not earners, top performers, you would get noticed if you dropped. Like, for a couple of times I dropped to 80 or whatever, and you'd get like a little comment like, oh, you're going to go slow today, are you? And it's like, well, no, I'm just performing still 20% better than that guy over there, but where's the incentive,
Yeah.
But again, I enjoyed the photography, and I did a few private jobs here and there just because, word gets out that you are a photographer. But I never really charged more than just mates rates, because, again, possibly because of the lack of ego, like you talked about, or the guy calling me out talked about, like humbleness or whatever. I never really saw myself as the photographer. I was more of a guy taking photos and then mucking around in Lightroom because it was fun.
Yeah. Yeah, which I guess is all professional photographers are doing. They just muck around a bit more.
And that's it. And if you get that odd break here and there, if you get published sometimes, you can start thinking, okay, I can charge a bit more for my services now. I know I'm worth it. And then you can build a portfolio and go from there. But while you're doing all of that, your bills still have to be paid.
Yeah.
And that's like going back to one of the first things we said, the freedom to be creative when you don't have to worry about money, I think is key if you can.
and not so much money. I mean, money is the big thing, but time, and time is money, because
Well,
if you're working, if you're working 40, 50 hours a week, you haven't got a lot of spare time to do all those other things, because you want to.
My current job is 45 hours a week.
Yeah.
That's the baseline. And then most days is more than that.
Actually want to spend time with your other half and do interesting, fun things.
I'm going to be lonely in a premiere in the room tomorrow night.
Nice.
Down in Dorset somewhere.
Well, it'll help you work towards completing Netflix.
There you go. Yeah.
Right.
Or maybe making more videos on my phone,
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sat here making videos and doing, we've got daily videos going out, and at the moment I have 50 subscribers.
Oh, that's good. I'm one of them.
You are? Excellent. Good.
I think that was your 25th, something like that.
But also getting like close to 30,000 views a month. And I'm like, that suggests to me that the content's not engaging, because I've got all of these views and very few subscribers. So I'm like, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Do it. It genuinely does help. And also for yourself, saying it to the camera every single episode, it just does help.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many metrics out there that say people need that trigger. The button's just down below. It's not hard.
It is. It's like down there, maybe. There's a little subscribe button. But there'll come a point where I'm like, oh, why am I making these? I'm making these videos because I want to have conversations with people. Sure. This is quite an elaborate way of having conversations with people, but it gets people to come in and just talk about fun things, and you end up going off on wacky tangents and learning so much about people. So it's really good fun. I am enjoying doing. We've
been friends for 20 years. I can't remember the last time we just sat and just directly talked.
Yeah. So I'm enjoying like the act of doing it, and the editing and all of that is good fun. But putting out daily videos and then a weekly like long form thing is quite tough. So I think as the subscribers are going up, it's worth doing, because I'm like, oh, people actually care. Do you think you would like have the time or the space to do something creative, whether it be more photography or videos or something?
Possibly, yeah. I think the photography thing, I've kind of moved away from that now. I haven't got my camera out in ages because, well, you would know as well. If you bring a camera to an event, then you've got loads of photos of everybody else, and none of you, you know, and that can be quite tiring as well. But videography and stuff. I was saying to you earlier, maybe I even said it on this podcast. I can't remember what we talked about, but I like going back and watching the old videos of things that I've made. And one thing that I'm trying to do more of is take 3 months, 4 months of the year, take the videos and photos that I've taken for that period of time, and make a little something, that I can just post somewhere. Because that's a good way of everyone's camera roll has got to be full of thousands of videos and photos that you haven't done anything with. Yeah. If you just spend an afternoon putting it into a video, you then can look back on that and say, oh, that was the first quarter of 2024 or whatever. Because I've done some stuff this year already that's been mad. I went to a wrestling school. Yeah. I was learning how to be a wrestler. I'm not going to pursue it, but I'm pretty sure I got a concussion doing it. But it was fun, and I can now say that I have been in the ring. I've taken a few bumps, and that's pretty cool.
And it was WrestleMania last week? Week
before last, I think, yeah. So really good time. Yeah. I barely slept that weekend.
Good.
It was really good fun. Yeah.
You're still getting all of the, you're getting to enjoy doing things that...
Oh, that's it. And growing up is optional, Growing old is mandatory. Growing up is optional. Yeah. We're all getting older. You can see the grey in my beard. That this is a new thing.
I've got a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, all right. Showing off with your full head of hair and your thick, luscious beard. This one actually should be trimmed down because I actually went to a medieval wedding earlier this month.
And I saw the pictures. It was fantastic.
It was awesome, dude. Yeah, it was really cool. Again, same people for the stag do as the wrestling school. Yeah. And maybe that's what the younger generation, because those guys, they're younger than us. They're not much younger. They're like late 20s, early 30s. Maybe that's what's going to be the new norm, is you just embracing your freakiness, your weirdness, and, just being who you are. Yeah. Because they had the most beautiful wedding, and everyone I've shown the photos to has said how lovely it was. But, you can't imagine being the guy that says, I'm going to do a medieval wedding. Yeah. But they did, because that's what they're into, and they had a great time.
Not very, very non-conventional, but it did look amazing. And the effort that everyone put into their outfits and things. It was
the organisers said that this is the first time they've seen the entire wedding trying and getting dressed up, They say normally it's the bride and the groom, the close family, and then people still turn up in suits and stuff. But this one was everybody from top to toe.
I mean, great. If you turn up in a suit there, you'd be the odd guy out.
Exactly. You'd stand out. Yeah. And again, that's all context.
And where does that bring us to now? So you went through your photography, and where did you go after that?
Oh, why did I go from photography? Oh, ugh. So, I shouldn't make that face, should I? Sorry, previous employer. I went into tool hire. It was my first proper boring job. Because I think that was probably the beginning of the stagnation of my creative, outlets. Because again, I needed money. I was 25, 26, looking to move out from my parents' house. And you can't do that on I think I was being paid 10 grand a year by the photography people, and then like a yearly bonus based on how much we sold. So 13 grand at best. I got hired at 17 grand and I thought I was loaded and the tool hire place. And I worked there for a while. And again, I've always been kind of pushed in most companies that I go to because I speak quite nicely. I'm quite personable. I like to think I'm a hard worker. And so after a little while, I was doing stuff for their head office, like marketing materials, because I had my camera. I knew how to use Lightroom and Photoshop and stuff. So I was making posters and things. But it wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't anything fun. And then through a friend of a friend, I found the current job that I'm in now. And I've been there for 8 years doing, they call it engineering. It's not. I'm a technician, essentially. I change water filters. And I do like some basic levels of plumbing, I said to you earlier, the kind of plumbing that I do is what Duplo is to Lego. It's not proper plumbing. It's put it together, that works, And if you take that all together, I think for the last, it must be 10 years then, I've creatively not stimulated, And so doing little clips here and there is helping. It's pushing them out a little bit.
I really like the edit of your clips that you did for the charity, because they were like, you took a run up and tackled yourself.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just you talking to camera with some funky effects. It was considered, and it was funny. It was really funny.
I keep meaning to make an outtakes one, because there's the part where I've got the chair at the tipping point and I'm about to go and I'm looking at the camera like, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I doing this? And I think I even just reached into, I had a vodka and tonic on the side. I think I just take a big glug of that and go, and but it was, again, I drive a lot. And so like I said, I'm going to Dorset tomorrow. So I think like driving a lot, I have a lot of time to plan things out. And the whole 3-week plan thing that I had as one of my videos, it wasn't a lie. I did have roughly 3 weeks worth of posts to make, but we raised the money. We were going to raise, I only asked for £500 because £5 a vote. I was thinking, okay, I might get 50 people put £10 in. But then a lot of people started throwing hundreds of pounds at this thing, like yourself. One of them, I think one of the earliest votes was you, that dropped 100. Yeah. And I didn't really know what to do with that, because I was thinking this is going to be like, okay, I've got weeks to try and, I thought it'd be like a league table. There'd be like, £5 more on that one. Now you have to do £10 to overtake them or whatever. But in the videos, it shows in 3 hours, we'd met the £500, like the 100% of what we were looking for. And then within 24 hours, it was 200%. We'd hit the £1,000 mark. And then I think it was only another couple of days, maybe a week, until we'd hit the £2,000 mark. And I think I'll find out what the actual final total was.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know what the running total, the final total was.
Yeah, if you Google actually, Beards for St Barts, that's what it was called. It's the first one that comes up. The final raised was £2,280 from 67 separate people.
That's amazing.
And that's really good. Yeah.
And if you don't mind, saying a little bit about what they did for you and or not you personally, but your family.
Yeah. So I'm the eldest of 4 boys. We were all very close in age, and then there's one a bit of an outlier at the end, Rory, the youngest one, the one that ended up getting leukemia. Both he and I were bookend surprises, let's say. It was
yeah.
I came along a bit too early and he came along a bit too late, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he I wrote it down here because I wanted to get it right. He ended up getting diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. It was a lucky discovery, though. He was feeling tired all the time, and he went in to the doctor because he had an ear infection that just wouldn't go away. And he ended up having some blood work done, talking about his tiredness. He thought maybe he had low iron or something, something pretty normal. Because he was a 27-year-old kid getting home from work and going to bed. You shouldn't be that tired all the time. And then he had a blood test done, and he texted me at 5 o'clock in the morning one time because he knows I start pretty early most days. He texted me and he was like, so Broomfield Hospital just called and they said to come in immediately and bring a bag. And I'm like, okay, well then you probably should go to the hospital immediately and get a bag. And he's like, I'm just going to wait for mum and dad to wake up. I want to tell them. And I'm like, wake them up. Broomfield Hospital have asked you to come down. Wake them up. But that's just him. He's a really sweet guy. Like, he doesn't want to inconvenience anybody. And I think he went in I think it was June, and he came out that November. So it was like 6 months-ish, 5.5 months. And he was, before it all happened, he was a physically fit, 27-year-old. He'd been going to the gym, he was working out, and it was a travesty that somebody so young got this. But if you want to take the silver lining, it was a blessing that he was so young and fit. He was he had the best chance of fighting it off.
Yeah, that treatment's brutal.
It was bad, yeah. There was 2 times we were worried about him. One of them was the first time he had the proper chemotherapy, and they had to inject, I can't remember what it was called, but it was the first round of like the aggressive stuff. He was throwing up for 4 hours, 5 hours overnight. Like, he just wouldn't stop, and he's obviously on fluids, so there's always more to throw up. And we were worried about him then. And then the other time was when he got the match and the donation eventually from one of our brothers. Again, little side detour. He was very lucky that there was 4 brothers, because I think each of us had a 25% chance of being a donor. And so with 3 brothers to choose from, he had good odds. He had a good chance of getting the right donation. Ended up being the one below me was the correct donor. And the one below him, so the third one down, Dan, he is a 50% match, which means because I was a 0% match, Dan would be 50% to me as well. But it's a bit suspicious because they're all blonde hair, blue eyes, and I've got dark hair and green eyes. There's some underlying shenanigans here. Mum doesn't want to talk about it, so we've had a few conversations. No, if I wasn't so much like my mum, I'd be like, yeah, okay. But I've got my dad's hairline and my mum's personality, so
yeah.
But yeah, so he got healed, and the one bad night was again when the last round of chemotherapy, they nuke your immune system down to 0. And they say, like, if you don't receive the new bone marrow, you will die because you have no immune system. That you just, anything, a cough could ruin you. So that was a bit touch and go. That's dramatic. It wasn't touch and go. He was always safe. He was always fine. But that was one of the points where, like, this could go badly if something goes wrong, and he could go. But he survived, and he's out. And his previously blonde beard is just starting to come back in properly, like nice and thick. And it's coming in kind of the shade of yours now. Like, it's coming in really dark. And it was blonde before. So I don't know, the chemotherapy messes with you.
Yeah, well, that's an understatement.
Yeah.
And it was St Barts that looked after him, wasn't it?
That's it. St Bartholomew's in London, yeah. Broomfield apparently have a habit of sending everyone that comes in with leukemia to St Bartholomew's, because there is a tiered list of, like, which is more serious and which isn't. But they... the guys in St Barts were like, oh, you're from Broomfield? Yeah, we get a lot of guys from Broomfield. It's like, apparently they have a habit of sending there because they know it's the best. They look after them. The hospital's been going for like 120 years or something. Yeah. It's really old. And the social media team there were very pleased that they had something to write about, with the beard campaign. They were pleased. I basically just gave them a couple of weeks worth of footage, and they were like, right, I've got a few social media posts here now.
So it's beards for St Barts, is that right? So beards for St Barts, and you can see, are there photos of the half beard?
There aren't, although I don't know how you want to run this. If you want, I can give you clips or photos that you can interject here.
Absolutely. If you send over some photos of the half beard, I'll put them up, and we'll do some social stuff.
And I'll give you the link to because I took photos every day of me being half bearded. So we've got that as well if you want.
Awesome. And can people still give money to that? Because it's a fantastic cause just to throw money at St Barts, because they're dealing with people like your brother every day.
Constantly, yeah. He was, again, him being a bit younger, he was often paired up with, because you don't always get a solo room unless you're properly being nuked, It was mostly like, I'd say middle-aged men. Obviously, he only saw the men because you put men with men. It was mostly middle-aged men that he was hanging out with, and he was an outlier in that he had a visitor every single day because mum and dad refused to let him be on his own.
Yeah.
And, we would come in whenever we could. I work a lot in London, so whenever I could, I'd pop in and say hi on my way home. And he was saying it was quite sad. A lot of the other guys didn't really get visitors. And a lot of the charity work they do is not just helping them while they're in there, but it's helping them with their expenses as well. Because if you don't have somebody living with you and you have to pay your mortgage or your rent or whatever, you know, that's going to be hard. And so a lot of the money, I think half the money that we raised went to his specific ward to give them, they use it on like training days, but they also use it on like buying just a big round of Starbucks for the staff or, you know, food, like they do a lunch one day or something. And the other half went into research.
Which is important. Like,
I mean, it's all, when you hear like cancer and you hear bone marrow and stuff, you imagine like the needle up the spine, because that's what is traditionally what was used. But we've moved on from that now. They were able to just do it intravenously.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you don't, like my brother was like, oh God, I'm going to have a needle shoved up my spine to get the marrow out. But no, they took his blood, they centrifuged it, you know, split it all up. And they were able to do it in a much more humane way.
That's incredible. Absolutely incredible. So he's making a full recovery, which is great. And is there any further risk, or is that complete green light now?
So he's in complete remission.
Fantastic.
I believe that means that I don't think you're ever actually out of the woods. I don't know that for a fact. This is me just speculating. But I know that remission means that it's gone, but like could grow back. Complete remission means that you should be good. And I think after 4 or 5 years, they class it as like, right, you're healthy. So he's not out of the woods, but he's, you know, the woods are behind him.
And that's amazing.
Yeah.
So I've got a little bit of personal experience of caring for someone who was, you know, having these kind of treatments.
Of course,
And you're right, like you go and visit them, and your life is taken over by this person's illness and their care.
Oh, we wrote that summer off. Like we just every free moment we had was going to see him in the hospital. Which again, he hates talking about it because he doesn't want any of the attention. He's a humble guy like myself. He doesn't want like the, you know, he doesn't want to interrupt what other people are doing. But we want to look after him. You know, he had a mountain of things, but people brought for him, you know, sweets and games and all sorts. Yeah.
So, would it be a potential catalyst for you doing more creative work? Because I think you're a creative person. Right? Is that something, even if you're just doing little clips of life here and there, or more of those funny videos? Because you're a funny guy and you're competent. You know?
I enjoy doing it as well. That's the thing. But it's so easy to get wrapped up in like the day to day. You know, the days are long, but the years are short.
Yeah,
I think is one of the phrases out there. But like it's every day feels like a slog getting through, you know, 11 hours of work, and then you have to cook dinner, and then you have to clean, and then you have to clean yourself, and it's very easy to lose days. And I think if I had more time to do those things, potentially. But again, one of your previous guests was talking about finding your tribe, right? Finding your niche. And I think that's what I'd have to do, is I'd have to have a reason to be making the videos, because I like making little clips, but, you know, at the moment, I'm only making them for myself because I make myself laugh. Yeah. And
it's a good start.
I mean, yeah, you know, it works. Yeah. Much like yourself, you want to have conversations, you know, if it goes somewhere, then great. But I think I'd need some sort of drive, some sort of reason to be doing the videos, because otherwise I'll just probably do what I did recently, which is make a first third of the year kind of clip. But it was fun. I mean, I had little jokes on each of the social media posts that were just really for me. You know, like the first one, talking about the different beards we could have. I mentioned that there's one we can't really talk about, and here's Michael Jackson, or Jordan, sorry. And you don't want to say Hitler, but everyone knows you're thinking Hitler, and it's just funny to do it.
That little tiny moustache.
Yeah, and then in there I put like a 2 or 3 frames of when I actually had that done to myself, and that was just for me, because people aren't going to see that, or maybe they did, but and the running theme of like me beating myself up with the green shirt, the green and white shirt, I had 100% in 3 hours. I drop kicked myself, and then I flipped the shirt around and wrote on the back 200% in 24 hours. I elbow dropped myself, and then 3 videos later, so not even sequentially, once we'd passed 300%, I had one with a giant spanner, and I'm walking up behind myself as if I'm going to clock me, and that's just for me. That's not for anyone else. That's
but it's funny, and it's that attention to detail, and
there was one. I think I took a bite of pizza and was like, oh god, beard's coming out with it because I ate too much. I obviously had the thing in my hand, but in the background there, I can't remember what I wrote something on the t-shirt, and it's behind me, and it's not the main shot, it's the small shot, and it's in the background. But in my head, I was like, if somebody zooms in on that, it'll be funny.
Yeah. So I mean, I think you should be doing something. So there is.
If anyone's hiring, if anyone wants to bring me on, like I am, as I say, I have nothing to give but my dignity. Let's do this. You know, this could be yours.
Fundraising for Barts is a full-time thing. But I mean, we've got a seat at our D&D table. Like, you can come along and have some fun.
Yeah.
They keep my group keep talking about like wanting to do a podcast, and obviously, I have the kit, but I just don't have the time to do another podcast. So I don't know, like D&D shorts is something, but I don't know.
I mean, it'd be so easy to fake as well.
Yeah.
You know, you set up scripts and then just like roll and be like, oh, 13, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, rolled a 1, oh no. You know, you could script that if you wanted to.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so we're a little over an hour, so we'll let the people have their time back. But where can people find out more about Barts or Jamie or any of the projects you've been involved in?
St Barts, obviously, they've got a massive online presence. Not presence, but like you can find information about them anywhere. They are fantastic, and if you ever have anyone that needs that sort of care, please send them there. It's a lovely, very clean hotel, and parking's awful, but aside from that, it's pretty good. For me, I'm so bad when it comes to social media. I don't uniform. My names are not uniform across all things. Veggio Frutio. There you go. That's probably the best one, isn't it? If you search Veggio Frutio or Veg or Veggio, you'll find me.
Veggio Frutio.
So VEGIO, fruit EO.
And there's a closing remark. Why Veg? Why is that your nickname?
I was thinking about that because you get nicknames as a kid and you are kind of stuck with them. But that one came around and I kind of thought it wasn't as bad as it could have been. You know, like there's all terrible nicknames that go around. The first time I got called Veg, we were all hungover. Under 18, it was probably 16, I think. You know what it's like when you finally get a case of beer and you and your boys have a bit too much.
Oh, yes.
The morning after, we were walking to the shops to get hangover food, you know. They're all picking up Haribo and bottles of Coke and stuff like that, and I go for a water and a packet of fruit, because in my head I'm like, I need to hydrate, you know. And it was Daz, actually funny. You guys, oh, what are you, some kind of veg? And that was it. That from then on, they called me Veg, and it was one of those things where I didn't discourage it because of all the nicknames you can get as a kid, Veg is pretty okay.
That's a good one.
And now I'm a full-time vegetarian too.
Oh, excellent. So it's come around.
It did come full circle, yeah. I saw a ginger cow licking a black cow, and I'm like, I can't justify eating those when they look like my cats at home.
Yeah.
The dissonance wasn't there anymore.
Makes sense.
But I'm not going to judge anyone until I'm 72. I went veggie at 32, so when I'm 74, I can then start judging people.
Okay, once you've
64, Jesus.
Once you've existed for that long. Okay.
Once it's the majority of my life.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming in. It's been a great chat, and just amazing all the things you've done. And I hope you can do something creative because I want to see it. That's all. It's purely selfish. But cool. Thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, not at all.
And I'll see you again soon. Cheers.